Good morning. My name is Marvin Burwell, and this is the video on the 2019 novel coronavirus, otherwise known as COVID-19, which is a more simplified name that they have given it so people don't have to call it novel coronavirus. Novel basically meaning new. Fresh highs have been laid on this strain of virus regardless of which way it has developed. Some people say that means it was created in a lab. Anything's possible, but currently on the data that I've found, nothing specifically showing it was created in a lab, although there will be more information about the attachments to that later on. So let's start with the simple stuff. Always got to have the markers with me for the whiteboard. And the coronavirus, starting off simply, what is the coronavirus? It is a SARS type 2 respiratory infection virus. It tends to have symptoms common to pneumonia, fever, the flu, that kind of thing. Okay, so if you find yourself getting like a dry throat and you're starting to cough when you breathe in, then you may want to go get checked because you may have some early symptoms of it. But what is the shape of the coronavirus? So up here in the corner, I'm going to draw the general shape. Corona, basically meaning sun or sun-like. All right, we'll have the circular structure, and it will have what they call these sugar proteins sticking out of it. And the purpose of these sugar proteins is it gives the virus the ability to attach to your specific cells, which is what you don't want it to do. But, and you know, it kind of is three-dimensional, so it kind of goes around it, right? Kind of got a porcupine-like appearance, but call it corona because the actual sugar proteins on the outer edge of it is what allows it to bind to your specific cell. So with that being said, let's move into a little bit of how it actually works. So this would be the virus here, right? And then there would be a cell in your body, and in the middle of that cell would be the nucleus. And what we have on the edge of your cell is what's called a phospholipid bilayer. It's phospholipid, but here's the thing. It's meant to be part hydrophobic and part hydrophilic, meaning a portion of it doesn't like water and a portion of it doesn't like fat. So when you hear philic, that means full of, or phobic, to keep away. Okay? So that phospholipid bilayer is like a defense shield to keep things from getting into your cell without proper checks and balances. And the checks and balances happen along the phospholipid bilayer. Now let's get some definitions in order. When I said the coronavirus has sugar proteins, you need to understand what a protein is. A protein, I don't want you thinking about protein sources of food. I want you to understand that a protein is made up of amino acids. And amino acids are kind of like, you know, there's individuals, but when you put them together to make a protein, they're kind of like this beaded necklace that I actually have on my chest right now. So when you take different types of amino acids and you string them together and then you fold them into a certain shape, you have a protein. So protein are basically mechanisms of action, tools to perform an action of some type. Now, being that these have sugar proteins, it means that it is a mechanism of action made up of sugar, okay? Or at least partly of sugar to keep it simple. Now, the phospholipid bilayer, phospho or phosphorus, which is a light-bearing mineral, and then they have lipid, which means fat, so phospholipid or fat, and phosphorus, makes it so that when things approach the cell to try and get in them, they have what they call receptor sites on them. And the receptor sites are kind of like a security checkpoint inside of a building. And something has to allow it through. Now, the issue here with this virus is it's an RNA virus or ribonucleic acid. So a little bit more understanding, right? You have what they call chromatin or chromosomes, right? Which think of like a ball of yarn, and it's wound up really tight, and it's wound up really tight. If it's a chromosome, it's wound up really tight in like the shape of an X. You know, they have the XY chromosome, but we have chromosomes. It's like a ball of yarn, and it's wound up. And if we start unwinding it, all right, so we start unwinding it, and let me get another red color here because I want you to know something else that's winded on top of it. These little marble-like things, and the name of these marble-like things are called histones, histone proteins. And a little more blue here. What it is as this unraveling is happening, you start to notice that the unraveling has these, the chromatin, because what you have is you have chromatin and chromosomes. The chromatin would be like the actual yarn that you're unraveling when you're knitting something. The chromosome is when you take that ball of yarn and you stretch it out into this shape. This stretched out shape, this X, would be considered the X chromosome. So it's made up of chromatin, which would be that, you know, that the fabric that you're unwinding would be called the chromatin. And you have these little histone proteins. So if you can imagine like yarn fabric wrapped around little marbles, the little marbles would be the histone proteins, or we'll use another word for it called history. History proteins, makes it simple to remember. And the chromatin, which is like pretty much this library of information, we kind of call the DNA. And I'm going to start to draw the pieces of the DNA that you guys are kind of familiar with, which is the little rungs on the twisted ladder that you always see when people talk about DNA. Right? So those are the rungs on the ladder. Now, you're about to get some really good details right here. And I need you to understand this because this shows you the capability that scientists have nowadays when it comes to biological organisms. The histones are the history. It's like having a gigantic library that a person can go into. And in that library is a bunch of books. We like to call those bunches of books the DNA, which is this big bunch of books. The DNA rungs on the ladder, if I wanted to be more specific here, I can take an alternative color, and each rung, you know, the pieces that you climb on the actual ladder, would be split in half. You may not be able to see this from where you guys are, or maybe you can. Now, why is it like that? There's something that they call nucleotides. So all of this stuff is inside the nucleus of your cell, which means it's access to data that has to do with your body and your body's history and everything that has come together over generations, ancestors, and all that to make up you. It's a list of instructions about the environment going way back. We don't have to talk about how far back, but what you need to know is there are letters associated with those rungs on that ladder. And those letters are A, T, C, and G. They stand for adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. The rungs on these ladders are considered nucleic pairs, okay? So the A goes with the T and the C goes with the G. And what happens is, as you take these letters and rungs on the DNA, so let's say you wanted to be able to, I'm gonna make a really hard example for you, something to make it easy to explain. It's jumping forward, but it makes it easy to understand. In computers, you write code for a website so that the website can function properly. In DNA, code is written so that proteins can be made, so that the body can function properly. Now, what happens is, if you want to change a trait within the body or get rid of a trait or improve a trait, they have the ability to cut right? A piece of the DNA, and then you, within that piece that's cut, this little strand right here, you can take each rung, which is going to have two nucleotides on it, an A and a T, or a C and a G, because it's both the sides of the ladder coming together. Like if we look at it, it's kind of like this. So let's say this could be an A, and this could be a T coming together. And this is a rung of the ladder that would be climbed. And then there's a bunch of rungs. And what happens is each rung makes up a sequence of these letters in a certain string. And the string could be as long as it needs to be for whatever specific protein needs to be built. But they'll read the codes on these, and they will translate this A, T, C, G, whatever order it's in, to the amino acids that are necessary to be strung together to make the protein to perform the function. Okay, so ball of yarn with little marbles that it's wrapping around, called the library or the history. The history is a bunch of books with information in them. That would be the DNA chain. If we pick one of the books, that would be like opening it up, and we would split this little DNA ladder in half and lay it down. And when we lay it down, we start to formulate, you know, those different proteins on the ladder, because we've cut the ladder rungs in half, or the ladder in half, and we laid the ladder side down, that specific side down. And when we lay it down like that, that would be called the RNA. So the RNA is half of the twisting ladder cutting it vertically. Okay, and then we lay it down, and what that does is that causes one of the nucleotides to change to a U, which is uracil, but that's a little extensive for what we have here. I'm giving you a basic understanding so that you can know how the viruses work and why the problems are being caused. Now, what I just explained to you was what histones are, what DNA is, what RNA is, which is the laying down. We talked about chromosomes made up of chromatin, and we talked about nucleotides, which helps to write the code that creates strings of amino acids to make up proteins, and proteins that will perform a function for your body based on what's going on in the environment, whether voluntary by your movement or involuntary things the body is supposed to do when a certain environmental stimulus happens. It will activate instructions from the gene sequence in order for your body to be able to perform in that specific environment. Now, coronavirus is an RNA virus. So if we're talking RNA, we're talking about that laid down half a ladder. Now, if we're moving forward from there, this is what's going to happen. The coronavirus is going to get into the body through the respiratory pathways or breathing pathways, you know, mouth, nose, different ways to get into the body. It can even happen if you like rub your eye, or probably even if you dig in your ear, or an open wound, right? Someone sneezes on it, or if you touch something that's got the virus on it, and then you kind of rub it into an open channel, or if it goes into an open channel like through breathing. The coronavirus is going to make its way down into your respiratory system, and once it gets close, it's going to try and bind to your cell using one of these radiating sugar proteins that stick out on the edge. Now, the fact it's an RNA virus with its own layer, with its own phospholipid bilayer, it has the ability to attach to your phospholipid bilayer and fuse to it. And once it fuses to it, it has the ability to start injecting RNA proteins into it. So what just happened? I explained all that stuff in the beginning to show you that basically instructions on how your body should perform in the environment get injected into your body. The problem is the virus is injecting foreign protein into your body. And now viruses are not considered alive or dead. It's kind of weird. It's just this dead thing that if it attaches to something, it creates a connection, injects instructions into it, and then babies start to be made inside of it. So we got these babies now being made inside of your cell because the virus has successfully attached, and now it's starting to proliferate or grow or become greater, whichever way you want to define it. And eventually what happens is your cell becomes so full of these little viral particles that it explodes open and it releases it out into the rest of your body. Now that viral instruction is being replicated or duplicated into other cells in your body. Over time, it spreads out further and further into more and more cells. Now, the reason this is a problem is because eventually, when your body gets into an environment where the specific area or the specific gene structure has to be activated that the virus is attached to, instead of it being your instructions, it could either be the instructions of the virus or your instructions plus the instructions of the virus that are going to activate. And when that happens, it causes a cascade of inflammation in your body, or friction. Inflame the nation. Inside, flaming of the nation. And then you got the letters ION on the end, which is light. All of this has to do with light. I mean, this is even the coronavirus, so you got the word light imbued there, but all information is a form of light. And what's happening is this inflammation, this friction being caused in your body, in the case of this type of virus, which gives it its name, is a type of SARS virus, SARS, which is the severe acute respiratory syndrome. So severe meaning it's serious, respiratory or severe acute. So you got severe, which is extreme. Acute, it's happening within a short period of time, because chronic would be over a long period of time and consistently happening. But this is acute. It's strong within a short period of time. Respiratory, which is breathing, and syndrome, meaning it's showing those things before it. Okay, so severe acute respiratory syndrome. You can call it distress too if the person is having trouble breathing. But what's happening is the inflammation from all the viral particles being activated within a certain given period of time is causing a cascade of inflammation to happen in your lungs, where what happens is you get a bunch of fluid, which usually when you have inflammation, it's a part of a healing process. But the problem is when you have a chronic inflammatory condition happening in the passageway of the lungs, you get this fluid that fills your lungs, which causes the cells to expand and touch one another and create rubbing and friction. The rubbing and friction creates heat and swelling, and then that causes the white blood cells to want to come in and see what's going on, because what they're doing is they're sliding in between cells, getting down there to see what's going on there. Is there something I got to eat, something I got to fight? You know, what is it that I got to do? Now they're down in there, and then what happens is the swelling may cause a little bit of fibrosis or tearing of the fibers within the lung, and this is causing like a leakage. So now where your lung passageway is supposed to be open for air to come in, there's a lot of fluid in there. So the moment you try, you immediately cough, which is why one of the ways they want you to check and see if you might have it is they want you to pull in some breath, hold it for about 10 seconds. And if you can't hold it very long and you start coughing and you have other things like dry throat and you might have a little bit of fever, something like that, you should go see a doctor, because you may be entering what we call the early to mid stages of COVID-19 or a SARS, the second type of SARS coronavirus, because there is a SARS coronavirus that came out before this one. This is second type, which is a pretty severe type, no differently than the first one is, because SARS is a pretty severe condition. Okay, so now that we got how the virus works, somehow the virus gets into your body through those different channels, through communication with other people, somebody sneezing, somebody coughing, it enters your passageways. Perhaps you touch something, you rub your eye, you rub your lip, you rub your nose, all these different ways that it could possibly get into your body. And once it gets in there, if it attaches to a cell, it will be able to inject information, which is all this cascade of stuff I just showed you, into your cell. It will start to proliferate or duplicate and create babies. It's so many of them in the cell that the cell will explode open and the little babies will start to attach to other nearby cells, and it spreads on and so forth, until eventually, if something happens in the environment that causes that specific gene that it attached to activate due to environmental factors, then the virus will come alive It will cause inflammatory things to happen within your body, which in the case of this virus, happen in the cardiovascular system, which causes swelling within the lungs. You lose the ability to breathe, and if the complication goes too far, you technically drown in all of the fluids and inflammatory things going on inside of your lung, just like you would when it comes to pneumonia. Okay, so now we got down here, we got what is the virus, we got how the virus works, and now we got cautions and dangers. And what I did was I prepared a couple of slides for that in order for you to see what the cautions and dangers are. So, the coronavirus, or at the time novel coronavirus, was discovered in Wuhan, China, which is in Hubei province, China, according to the map you guys are looking at on the screen right now. Now, on the WHO's website, it tells you about how the coronavirus are a large family of viruses that cause illnesses ranging from the common cold to more severe diseases such as MERS, or Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or SARS, the Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. These are both types of coronaviruses. The novel coronavirus is a new strain that is not previously identified in humans. So keep wording in mind here. It says it's a new strain that has not been previously identified in humans, which means it could have already been identified elsewhere. Now, it shows you that coronaviruses are zoonotic. So, of course, if it's identified elsewhere, it would mean that they are transmitted between animals and people. Detailed investigations found that SARS coronavirus was transmitted from civet cats to humans, and MERS coronavirus from dromedary camels to humans. Several known coronaviruses are circulating in animals that have not yet infected humans. Now, in the case of this novel coronavirus, or COVID-19, that is, as it is now named, this one was discovered, it seems to be coming out of either a bat or a snake. And pretty much someone could have been working with bats or snakes, got bit, got touched, got some type of fluid on them. They might have prepared food with that, you know, within coming in contact with it. They might have shook someone's hand after coming in contact with it. But what basically happens is somehow the virus from the animal got into the actual biological system of a human. It's not as simple as, you know, you were just near a bat or a snake. It's not that simple. There's usually some type of biochemical transmission to move it from one thing to another. Okay, now that we got some prerequisite information out of the way, let's talk about what's called the RAS system, the renin-angiotensin system. This is the system that gets affected by the actual coronavirus. If you look on the screen, we have here SARS coronavirus 2, because there was another SARS coronavirus in the past. Cell entry depends on ACE2 and TMPRSS2 and is blocked by a clinically proven protease inhibitor. Okay, what do we have here? What basically happens in the renin-angiotensin system is your body has detected that the blood pressure is dropping due to some possible environmental reason. Loss of blood, dietary conditions, whatever it may be. So what happens is renin is secreted into your blood. From the renin, angiotensin 1 is created. From angiotensin 1, we have the angiotensin converting enzyme. An enzyme is a type of protein, meaning it's a structure that performs a function, as I explained earlier. So this enzyme converts angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. Angiotensin 2 is what causes an increase in blood pressure by constricting or tightening down on the veins to cause the blood pressure to go up. What it also does is it causes your body to start retaining some sodium and some water from the kidney, liver channels, or what have you, to help bring the pressure up and rebalance the electrolyte and the chemistry within the body to keep it operating at normal. Now, remember, when you don't have proper balance of electrolytes and blood and fluid in your body, this can cause your heartbeat to go up because it has to help increase the pressure in order to keep the body receiving oxygen at the proper rate and getting minerals and fluids to the proper channels at the rate in order to keep you kind of functioning. So now you can see the problem with that is you could tax the heart over time, because there's a standard point the heart should actually be at to keep everything normal and flowing smooth and to give you longevity. But making it work too hard will cause it to have to rest more often, and when you can't rest more often, you can see that turning into heart palpitations and problems and cardiovascular diseases. So there's your immediate connection. So now, the fact that this has to do with blood pressure, which has to do with the amount of oxygen in the body, we also know that if this system never turns off, which is a part of the problem with having the coronavirus comes in, it can cause an increase in inflammation, because a system that never turns off creates constant friction, which heats the body up, causes swelling, causes fluid leakage into certain channels, which constricts certain pathways, which in this case, it's constricting the pathways in the lungs that allow you to breathe. There's so much fluid and white blood cells and craziness going on in there, and inflammation and swelling, there's no room to breathe, which is why it can cause a respiratory distress, keeping the person from being able to breathe, which is why you want to, if you have early symptoms, you want to get checked out fast, because you want to make sure that your body stays online and is able to win the battle against the actual virus. Now, for those of us with high blood pressure, diabetes, people who smoke, COPD, also known as emphysema, COPD being chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder, having to do with the pulmonary channels within the body. These are increased risk factors. So having high blood pressure already speeds the actual problem of the disease, because once it attaches to that ROS system and gets attached to the ACE converting enzyme and the ACE converting, the angiotensin converting enzyme system, once it gets attached to that, then there's a chance that it may never turn off. And if it doesn't turn off, friction goes up, swelling, and all kinds of things happen within the body, which basically can restrict your breathing, which is what's causing the deaths and the major problems that have to do with the actual system. Now, and we've gotten that information out of the way, what else do we want to talk about? We want to talk about something that is being pushed heavily right now, which it should be in pretty much all cases, and that is staying away from the problem. Now, obviously, we still have to live our lives. There are people who have to work, and we have to conduct regular business and economics for us to have a pretty decent life out here on this earth. Now, you want to adhere to standard protocols when it comes to not spreading germs and viruses and things like that.
Take it outside, lady.
So when you wash your hands, we're talking 20 seconds, get a good scrub to the hands, make sure you clean off any areas that may be contaminated with practically anything, because we don't want to just talk about the coronavirus here. We also want to talk about all viruses and all dangerous bacteria and stuff. So we want to maintain a fairly clean environment. So washing the hands is of utmost importance so that anything we touch doesn't transmit an actual virus. In the case of the novel coronavirus or COVID-19, we do know that bleaching agents are pretty good at killing off the viruses on surfaces. So make sure you clean off any contaminated areas as best as you can. If you have to cough or sneeze, make sure it's into your elbow. If you feel yourself coming down with a sickness, make sure you stay home, away from the public. If you find that you're being induced with a fever, or you feel like you have pneumonia symptoms, or you're just uncomfortable, make sure you visit a doctor. Let them know that you're a little worried. Your body's not having a very comfortable response right now, and you're just worried. You want to know if you've come down with any flu, cold, or virus. So follow the standard protocols. Stay away from places where you know that the virus has been active. It takes usually a couple of days for the virus sitting on a certain surface to actually dissipate or deaden so that it cannot transmit, which in that case you still may want to make sure that cleaning has been done in those specific surfaces. But at the exact same time, a human being who actually
comes down with the virus can be contagious up to, let's say, an average of about four, a 4 to 6 week period, and as much as 8 is what I've seen as far as the studies, like from the point at which a person has it to a person being deemed not having it anymore. It's been about a total of a 6 to 8 week period. As fast as a 2 to 4 week period. You usually have like a 7-day incubation period where you can't tell that you even have it. And then there's like a up to a 2 week period where the symptoms are showing. And then there's another week where it's kind of just hanging out for a little bit before it becomes inactive in the body again. So all in all, about a 6 to 8 week period for, I guess you could say somewhat of an absolute certainty that the virus has dissipated. And just make sure you do proper cleaning and follow proper protocols when it comes to not spreading the actual virus. All right.
Okay. Now that you know a lot more about the cautions and dangers of, what could happen if you contract the coronavirus, and, cautions on staying away from it and things like that you're supposed to do, let's move down to the business, the economics, and politics. As you guys can see at the beginning of the video, I'm reading an article out here in Ohio right now, right? Because was working in a school this week, and the job got shortened from the photography because they're shutting the school down a little early because of the coronavirus spreading. So, you don't want to be liable for anyone catching it. We're at a university, and universities have students from all over. So during spring break, they travel to all these different places, and, there's no telling where they can contract it. It's not as simple as a local high school could be, where, of course, high schools are shutting down too, but they don't have exactly the range of reasons that a university would. But nonetheless, still safety factors are included because these are children. You look on the front of the paper here, virus, oil fears, shatter the markets. So you're noticing that the virus, because of the ways that it can transmit, who knows, something could be shipped to somebody express, people taking flights, driving Uber, a lot of different ways that people can touch things and other people can interact with it. And what's happening is, if there's an outbreak of the coronavirus, that can affect the business on site. So you can imagine if you want to go to the movies and you find out that someone in the movies contracted the coronavirus, you're not going to want to go in that movie theater. Hence, business is going to drop. Less materials are going to be ordered that make that business run because it's not going to be selling as it should. You might notice profits go down quite a bit. People might get let go from positions. Stock markets drop. A whole lot of different things happen just from the scare of an illness. Okay. So business, economics, politics. You see a lot of stuff on the news with the president making comments trying to find out exactly when is some type of perhaps vaccine or remedy or pharmaceutical intervention treatments are going to be prepared for people to be able to, survive the illness.
Before we go on, I wanted to bring something to your attention. A lot of the times when these diseases come out or when these big situations happen in the world, there's also a lot of articles that are kind of trying to center your attention onto specific things. Now, I'm not one who's much for, pushing conspiracy theories as truth. However, what I do like to do is draw attention to certain things that are going on. I'm not too much of a fan of a totally one-sided point of view of anything, as nobody should be. But at the same time, if something is true going one way, it's true. It is what it is. Now, what I did notice is there's definitely a boost of articles talking about conspiracy theories being debunked. But I like to also look at the terminology when someone is drastically trying to stop the people from having just a point of view until total truth comes out. Ways for them to remain vigilant. Now, back in 2017, on the left side of the screen here, you'll see that there's an article that came out on January 18th, 2017. It says federal ban lifted on studying the most dangerous pathogens, and it just so happens to say that only a few labs will earn funding for such gain of function research on SARS, MERS, and other deadly viruses. Now, it just so happens to be attached to the name of a virus that's actually causing a lot of shutdowns in the world right now. Now, that happened in 2017. What this did was this gives the ability for certain labs to be used to study a dangerous virus so that when they pop up, doctors will have the ability to know how to handle them. So it's basically, we're going to do something bad, but keep it contained so that we can study to create something good later on if situations such as what's going on with the coronavirus happens right now. But here's the problem. So now it says there's conspiracy theories on the right side of the screen anyway. It says the conspiracy theories about the origins of the coronavirus debunked. Now, in order to debunk something, you have to actually prove it not true. But you see the red writing I have here. It says there's a rumor the coronavirus started in a Chinese lab and a scientific consensus that it didn't. See, here's the problem. It says a scientific consensus. It doesn't say it's been proven that it did not happen in a lab. It just says a scientific consensus. So if I have a group of friends who create something inside of a lab and then I hide it from people and all the people start saying, hey, you know, the way this looks, it looks like you created it in a lab. If I say a scientific consensus, it could be a consensus between me and my friends who are scientists. Doesn't necessarily mean it's true. See, people are skeptical because of the wording that's being used. See, look here, I'm going to read this article here. Meanwhile, on Fox News and social media, a dangerous conspiracy theory about the origin of the health crisis won't die. There are two main versions of the rumor, and they have one common thread, that the coronavirus, or SARS coronavirus type 2, is originated in a level 4, which is the highest biosafety level, research laboratory in Wuhan. And I have another picture here on the screen, which is where the Institute of Infectious Disease in Wuhan is actually located. So could be a coincidence, could not be. You know, I leave a little room for both sides. It says here that there's a chance that the virus actually escaped, right? It was engineered in a lab by humans as a bioweapon. In another version, the virus was being studied in a lab after being isolated from animals and then escaped or leaked because of poor safety protocol. Now, obviously, if that was true, that's not the type of information you will want to get out. So even though there's no way for me personally to say whether it's true or not that it started in a lab or not, or if it was just somebody fooling around with certain animals and it transmitted, which is possible too, I'm just saying there's room for skepticism, but we don't want to call skepticism truth. Okay? It says the Wuhan Institute of Virology is a real place, and the exact origin of the novel coronavirus is still a mystery. So you see that? When they say you can't say scientific consensus says that it's not true that it started in a lab. Instead of saying scientific consensus, it's easy to just say, no, it didn't start here in the lab. You know, that could be just someone saying it as a marked truth. But instead of saying, no, it didn't start here in the lab, we weren't testing or working with anything, it didn't escape. No, they don't say that. They say it's a scientific consensus. But then later on down in the article, the exact origin of the novel coronavirus is still a mystery, which means it leaves room for skepticism. So people are not wrong to be skeptical, because it's not like, you know, there haven't been articles in the past of, you know, people lying to us and you know, lying to the public in order to have their agendas met. Okay? With researchers racing since the outbreak began to figure it out, but already virologists who've parsed the genome and infectious disease experts who study coronaviruses say that they have enough evidence the virus is brand new and came from nature. A large group of them, citing genome analysis from multiple countries, recently affirmed The Lancet that the virus originated in wildlife. It just says that it's zoonotic, which is what we said earlier. It's zoonotic. It passed from an animal to a human. It's not impossible that they could be working with extracts from animals or animals themselves inside of a lab. Okay? So I put at the bottom, if the origin is still a mystery, how can it be debunked? Dangerous science hiding truth is not new. Okay? Just wanted to cover that really quick, you know, before I moved on to this next section.
Now, nature and solutions. I have prepared plenty more slides for you guys specifically for nature and solutions. Let's move over to that, and so let's look at a few of those.
First and foremost, most important when we're talking about nature and we're talking about solutions, one of the most primary things I want to talk to you guys about is selenium. Selenium is primarily known for its ability to help fight, reverse, and heal from certain cancers. I want you guys to look up Dr. Joel Wallach about that information, but selenium is so important. There's something called the NRF2 factor, which is it's like a nuclear factor kind of thing. Like if you look at the study I have on here, it says selenium, a key element that controls nuclear factor kappa beta activation and I kappa beta alpha half-life. Now, the studies there, you guys can do a quick reading of that by pausing the video, but what I just want to mention about selenium is there's what they call the antioxidant system. And among other things, selenium is a really important precursor to that system working. So, you know, for those who don't know what the oxidants are, is what happens when, you know, think about iron when it rusts. If you hit it with water and then it gets hit with air long enough, it'll start to turn brown and rust. Well, oxidation is what causes that rusting. So when I say antioxidants, it's to keep the system from rusting or degrading. What happens is kind of like having a male who's looking for a female and it's just flying and bouncing around your body, tearing things up, trying to find it. Antioxidants give the electron pair to pair up with that free radical to stop the damage. And for that system specifically, which is called the NRF2 system, the antioxidant system, for it to work, selenium is a major player. Selenium is used to create an antioxidant heavy molecule called glutathione, which is a mixture between an amino acid and selenium. The amino acid primarily is cysteine, and if you don't have cysteine, then you get methionine. But amino acids, as I stated in the beginning of the video, amino acids make up proteins to perform a function based on what's going on in your environment. So you need the proper materials to perform those functions and to build those proteins. And in this case, your antioxidant system uses selenium and it uses the glutathione, which is made up of the amino acid cysteine and the selenium mineral. Okay, so we want to have good selenium levels and get plenty of amino acids in the foods that we eat. Mainly vegetable sources would be the healthiest for those who are able to get it. Okay. Environment, sunlight. I have never seen, as far as me doing my study, something that medical professionals seem to be so skeptical about. And unfortunately, this has to do with people understanding the difference between hot and cold climates and which one your body has an affinity to, aka that skin melanin. Now, melanin is present in nerves in different parts of the body, but the one that we're talking about here would be the skin. The ability to withstand a certain amount of UV radiation from the sun in order to help prop up your body's immune system. When I was doing the study on sunlight, I ran into so many articles, and there's tons of them, where they are constantly pressing the fact that a person can wind up with melanomas and skin cancers from getting too much UV radiation from the sun. That is not something. What's happening is it's basically pushing people away from getting sun, and that's not the way it's supposed to work. The sun is the reason for life on this planet. You have to get sun. Sun helps your body convert the cholesterol inside of itself to vitamin D, which allows you to absorb more calcium, have strong bones, and it helps with creating the hormone cascade in your body, one of the big ones being testosterone, and the conversion of nitrogen into nitric oxide, which helps things grow, which helps with your testosterone, which helps with your libido. There's so many things sunlight helps with. There was something else in the past called heliotherapy, which was the ability for the sun to pull toxins out of the system and strengthen it. Now, in today's world, there's so many toxins in the environment, it's a little rough to do it, because when you get enough chemicals in your body, you start to have uncomfortable reactions from the sun, like people with lupus. You get such a strong reaction, it taxes the body so much at one time, trying to pull all of that out of there, it could practically kill you. So in certain conditions, you have to be very careful on getting sunlight. But as a human being, even animals, most animals anyway, you are supposed to get sun. You cannot ignore sun for the sake of supplements. No, you can't. It's a part of natural living on Earth. It's like getting water. It's like being outside getting fresh air. You need sunlight to make conversions in the body that allow the body to live. Sunlight stands up there stronger than food. I'm going to say that again. Sunlight is so high on the list, it's stronger than food when it comes to maintaining health. Prevalence of major diseases taper off as you get closer to the equator, especially things like diabetes. It has an effect on blood pressure, which is something we were just mentioning earlier that's attached to the coronavirus. So I need you guys to understand that sunlight is so important, but you would be hard pressed to find articles that really push the sun more than they kind of negate it, because their idea is just amazing. Like, I probably spent about 4 hours checking out sunlight documentation, and they spent so much time mentioning how you can get melanomas and skin cancer, and not pressing the fact that getting sunlight is important to having very strong body and very strong immunity, which is what can keep things from, like viruses, from getting in your body, because all that sunlight, all that light, all that electricity and power you're imbuing into your body makes the livability of a virus in your body not sustainable. So not only would it have issues getting in, it would have issues being able to attach and not easily be excreted out because of the amount of light and electricity passing through your body being in a healthy state, which heavily includes the sun. So that's what I have to say about that. Let's move to the next one. All right, next one is resveratrol. Where do you get it from? Usually the skin of berries, especially the purple grape. Resveratrol, if you guys, we were talking about amino acids making up proteins earlier. You have one amino acid called tyrosine, which is responsible, along with copper, of creating the skin pigment that we have called melanin. Resveratrol would be the plant-based form of that. So for us, the amino acids tyrosine, the plant-based form of tyrosine is resveratrol. And let's see what we got here. Let's get a little bit of details from this article we got. Resveratrol belongs to polyphenols, a stilbenoids group possessing two phenol rings linked to each other by an ethylene bridge. The natural polyphenol has detected in more than 70 plant species, especially in grape skin and seeds, was found to discrete amounts in red wines in various human foods. Now, let's get to the meat and potatoes. Here we go. It acts against pathogens, including bacteria and fungi. As a natural food ingredient, numerous studies have demonstrated that resveratrol possesses a very high antioxidant potential. Resveratrol also exhibits anti-tumor activity and is considered a potential candidate for prevention and treatment of several types of cancer. Indeed, resveratrol anti-cancer properties have been confirmed by many in vitro and in vivo studies, which shows that resveratrol is able to inhibit all carcinogens stages: initiation, promotion, progression, even more other bioactive effects, namely an anti-inflammatory, anti-carcinogenic, anti-inflammatory, anti-carcinogenic, cardioprotective, vasorelaxant, phytoestrogenic, and neuroprotective have been reported. So, what have we mentioned in this video concerning the coronavirus? Causes inflammation. This is anti-inflammatory. Anti-carcinogenic for those who are looking into cancer protective mechanisms. Cardioprotective. We said the inflammation from the coronavirus can cause cardiovascular reactions, so it's cardioprotective. Vasorelaxant. Remember we said that the ACE2 system causes the angiotensin 2 causes vasoconstriction. This says it's vasorelaxant. So it relaxes the blood vessels, which opens them up, which allows it to be able to carry more blood, therefore oxygen, to help you breathe better. So that should be a part of the dietary thing. Neuroprotective. We know neurons help move electrical signals to make things happen within your body. Hey, look, man, resveratrol. You got to get down with that. Make sure your purple grapes have the seeds in it too. What we got next? We got berberine. Berberine is an isoquinoline alkaloid isolated from Coptidus rhizome. And there's another name there. And then you got Berberis vulgaris, extensively used for as long as an oriental medicine to treat gastroenteritis and secretory diarrhea. Increased evidence has exhibited that berberine has a wide range of pharmacological activities. For instance, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-tumor, antimicrobial, anti-fibrosis effects. Now, here's the thing. When you get a lot of that inflammation going on in the lung area, you got some fibrosis, which is like, it's like a swelling and a tearing down of the fibers that make up the lung tissue. This says anti-fibrosis effects. So we want to keep that in mind. Oh, what else we got down here? It's talking about, if we go further down, we got that nuclear factor kappa beta going on again. And we're talking about the NRF2 system, nuclear factor systems, things like that, which include things called interleukins and, IG bodies and different things like that. So I want you guys to definitely check out berberine because of it says it plays a critical role in renal inflammation and fibrosis relief and things like that. Man, check it out. Berberine. You got to get down with the berberine, right? So take a look at that. What else we got? Elderberry. Oh man, we got elderberry up in the building. Inflammation is one of the organism's attempts at self-protection with the aim to remove harmful stimuli, including damaged cells, irritants, or pathogens. There's a growing research interest concerning anti-inflammatory natural products that will prevent and clarify the pathogenesis of various diseases such as cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and chronic inflammatory diseases. So once again, we got something that's, that's dealing with inflammation, mediation, and, helps out with cardiovascular diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, type 2 diabetes, pulmonary fibrosis. We got a couple of words that are starting to repeat. You see where I'm going with this. Another thing I want you guys to check out, even if you go back a little bit and look at the others, you notice I have these little chemical structures down at the bottom where the picture section is, on the bottom right side of the picture section. You see these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 six-sided shapes inside of it. And they've got these double bonds, which is the extra line lining 3 of the corners. We call those aromatic rings or benzene rings. Those allow the actual element, the elderberry, to trap light. There is a pigment, an anthocyanin pigment inside of it, and those pigments, those colors, which is why we tell you to eat foods heavy in color, really help out with the immune system. And you got flavonoids and things like that. There's all these crazy terms and names that have to do with these foods that you guys need to check out to have as standard information in your bag for when you need to, in a certain situation, you may need to help yourself. You may need to, know some things in advance. So that's why I'm helping you guys out by giving this information. So yeah, elderberry with the aromatic ring. Like I said, berberine also had the aromatic ring. Resveratrol, aromatic ring. We know that the sun gives off light. Oh man, what's the last one we got here? Oxymetrine. This one was actually fresh to death for me. You got a picture of it over there on the right side. You got the protective effect of oxymetrine on myocardial, which means muscle. So it has to do with the muscles of the cardiac system, right? It says effect of oxymetrine on myocardial fibrosis. Here we go again. Induced by acute, SARS is an acute, myocardial infarction. So it looks like they tested it in rats. And in one of the signaling pathways. A component extracted from a traditional Chinese herb, Sephora japonica, which is the picture I have on the right, demonstrated to have a variety of pharmacological actions. It looks like here may exert a protective effect on the cardiovascular system. Here we go again, baby. Possible role playing against myocardial fibrosis induced by acute myocardial infarction. Look, man, check it out. Look, with all this information I'm giving you guys, and there's more things than this, I'm pretty sure, out there. But these are things that just move you in a direction. Like, you're gonna want to look for your local master herbalists and and talk to your doctor about these things, and make sure your levels of certain things like selenium and glutathione is pretty high, so that you have a high protective effect against things that try and invade your body. A lot of this stuff is protective. It's things that you do in advance to keep yourself in a healthy state, because you don't want to, virus is not something you want to react to. You want to be proactive, meaning before it happens. Because once it gets in there, if it latches on and it spreads throughout your cells, now you're talking about at any given moment, your body in a certain environment could express the gene that the virus has tagged onto, thereby causing the problem. Okay, so definitely, man, make sure you guys, pay attention out there. Keep yourself healthy, keep it strong, because it's just one big hole that we're digging ourselves when we continue to say, let me enjoy myself with these unhealthy things, while other bad things connect to it. We're being pushed into a position where we're no longer going to know what to do to help ourselves. We're giving up our ability to have a connection with nature, and that in the long run, that's going to hurt us more than help us. So there's a list of some cool things for you guys to check out to keep yourselves healthy, so that when the virus is shooting out all around you, you might be the one person who came in contact with it, never even got into you. Now remember, statistics wise, so far the average percentage rate of people who are going to get it is between 3 and 5%. I'm sorry, the average rate of 3 and 5% of the people who die who contract the virus. And there's websites you can go to check that out. Right now, the highest amount of people are in Wuhan, China, who have actually died from the virus, which makes sense. There's a high quarantine level there. They don't exactly have the purest of air, so there's not a lot of sun penetration going on there. So, that's that. Grab you guys one of those N95 masks, cover that if you need to. Get your immune system up and straight, so that you guys will be able to kind of traverse this earth and not have too much worry about these things. Let's not worry about something before we get it. Let's just follow proper defensive protocols, and if you just so happen to come down with it, then you deal with things the way you have to when you come down with it. But prior to that, you just follow the normal protocols. You keep your immune system strong, keep your diet strong, stay out in nature, meaning stay out in the sun, stay on the beaches, keep your feet on the ground with no rubber, no socks, no shoes on it. Let's keep our connection to the planet clean, so that we can have healthy immune systems, and then nature can take its course as it does, which is the transfer of information from one biological organism to another, so that they can have understanding of one another, so that they can stay protected from anything that may be trying to destroy it. All right?
Okay, so now that you guys had a chance to look at things like selenium, glutathione, berberine, all these different things that can be used when you're trying to keep your immune system healthy. Now, those things being shown are preventative measures. What you don't want to do is put yourself in a position to contract the virus, because you don't like, technically, you can't physically like destroy a virus. That's not something that you can specifically do. What your body does is it has a strong enough immune system to keep the virus from either attaching to the cell or ever becoming active to the point where it can isolate it and excrete it out of your body. That's the way viruses work. A virus is a type of protein. It's no different than chicken, beef, pork, dairy. These are foreign proteins meant for other things that have gotten into your body, and your body is having an adverse reaction to it. Some things happen short term, some things happen long term. The greatest way to prevent any of it is to have a strong immune system. And one of those strengths in the immune system would be the sun. And the sun is a really big deal. A lot of people have reactions in the sun when they have like allergies, autoimmune diseases, because what happens is it was called heliotherapy in the past. The sun, due to its amounts of light that it's able to imbue upon the planet, has healing factors, but at the same time, just like anything, it can have a healing factor and a hurting factor depending on, your specific biochemistry and the environment that you're supposed to be in. See, one of the really big deals that I stress to people a lot is the climate that your body belongs in. In a warmer climate, there's going to be different ways of survival and thriving than it would be in a colder environment. And that's something that I commonly like people to understand. I know a lot of people like to dodge the whole race this, race that, what makes a person different than another, but it's very important. Biodiversity is very important. Biodiversity is why you live, and it also can be why humans don't survive. So you have to have biodiversity, but you have to understand biodiversity gives strengths and weaknesses to each specific thing. Now, how you view it is completely up to you. But by having an understanding of nature and how nature works, that is the thing that gives you peace, something that allows you to kind of settle into the way things are so that you can be the best and most loving coming from your perspective to another person's perspective. That's the way it's supposed to work. Your positives assist me and my positives assist you. And as long as there's a communication that's loving between one group of people to another, then everything can be all right. But just remember, we're talking about a virus here. The way nature works is things live, things pass away. There's a cycle of life that must continue. Anything that passes away is fed to the earth to be broken down, turned over, so something else can use the materials. Things aren't really meant to sit still in nature. They're meant to be built, broken down, passed to the next thing, and new materials recycle from one thing to another. Everyone gets their chance. Time and chance happen to all people, right? So there you have it, guys. You know what the coronavirus is. You know how it works. You got some cautions and dangers associated with it. The business and economics, I'm pretty sure you can all see, but you know, I just gave you a little tad bit on the fact that that's being affected by it. And you got some nature and solutions to go along with it. So, thank you guys for checking out this video, and I will catch you in the next one.
We come around once in a blue moon, just to show you that we love you and we'll never leave, 'cause we are anointed. We're the same way every day, 'cause we're angels, some mighty and some